Well, America has just hit peak crazy, and we're not just talking about alligator Alcatraz here. That's Trump's latest despicable distraction of whacking people in internment camps surrounded by alligators in the Florida Everglades, a move designed purely to rile up the rednecks. Putting this alligator Alcatraz human rights monstrosity in the shade is the One Big Beautiful Bill. One Big Beautiful Bill. George Orwell must be rolling in his grave. The One Big Nasty Bill is the denouement of money and politics, a suite of legislation so destructive that it will hasten the demise of the US and give rise to unprecedented unrest and division. It already has. This One Big Beautiful Bill is the biggest transfer of wealth from poor people to rich people in history, to literally the richest group of people on Earth. But don't you worry, because the grifter-in-chief, Donald Trump, has been out marketing his Trump fragrances, l'odeur de Trump, parfum de Trump. I mean, really, who would buy that? Now, we'll get to the guts of this big nasty bill momentarily, which includes tax relief for gun silencers. So there's a measure in there. If you're a murderer, it'll be cheaper to do your murdering. We'll get there momentarily. But the question is, why are they doing this? Why this gargantuan, climate-destroying, society-wrecking law? And the answer is that billionaires and corporations are the biggest winners. So it is reasonable to assume, since they bought off the politicians, that the politicians passed this One Big Beautiful Bill because that is what their donors wanted. Just as with IPAC, the Israel lobby, they've been bought off. And so it is that the words MAGA morons have been bandied about a lot, as many politicians railed against the bill this week, until earlier in the week, Vice President J.D. Vance, who's hardly arm's length in this transaction, cast the deciding vote to break a Senate deadlock, and now it's headed back to the House to be ratified. Now, the lessons for Australia are clear. Get money out of politics. Get money out of politics. It's as simple as that. It's something that our politicians say they will address, but they never do, as per the legislation last year, which we've covered in detail. Why get money out of politics? Because we are headed, albeit at a far slower pace, down under, in exactly this same direction. Corporatocracy, the rule of corporations. But let's try and be fair and balanced about this One Big Beautiful Bill. Not fair and balanced in the Fox News sense, just straight fair and balanced. Yes, everyone gets a tax cut, and there are child tax credits and car loan relief, and as the White House boasts, on a percentage basis, the lowest paid in America get the most. But that's tricky, because if you look at it in toto, not on a percentage basis, the transfer of wealth, if you look at the other measures like cutting Medicaid, go to the wealthy people in America, and the debt goes up by $4 trillion. So if you are an adherent to the principles of trickle-down economics, you might like this bill. Could do okay under it, while society collapses around you in smoking ruins. The One Big Nasty Bogan Bill will increase the debt, here it is, by an estimated $4 trillion. It will increase annual mortgage interest payments by an average of $1,060. It'll remove taxes on gun silencers, as we mentioned. That's a beauty. It'll give an average tax cut for those on $4.325 million. If you earn $4.3 million, you'll get a tax cut of $390,000, as if you needed one. And here's the really egregious sin. It'll cut more than $900 billion, almost $1 trillion from Medicaid. And Medicaid caters for America's most disadvantaged people. It'll strip 16 million Americans of their health care. How can that be a good thing? It'll increase annual small business loans interest by an average of $860. It'll cause the closure of 300 rural hospitals and 500 nursing homes. It'll end food assistance for 2.9 million Americans. End food assistance. What are they wanting the food to do? Trickle down? And here's the one for the climate. It will end clean energy tax credits. It'll cut subsidies to wind and solar. It'll tax those companies involved, slowing the transition to renewable energy, which is dirty for the environment and, of course, costs a lot of jobs. It'll cost 400,000 jobs or something in the new energy sector, and it'll lift, because it'll slow the pace of transition, it will lift energy bills by roughly $400 a year for families and 10% for businesses. It'll triple the budget, here's the social ramifications, for ICE, Trump's Gestapo, who are busy arresting people on the streets and then turning them without trial, locking them up in alligator Alcatraz, surrounded by alligators and pythons, deporting them maybe to El Salvador or somewhere, and it jettisons a 10-year moratorium on AI legislation by the states, which will unleash mayhem. I mean, as if AI isn't going to smash jobs as it is. But if there's no regulation, it's just a free-for-all. Now, the MAGA faithful, in riposte, are busy repelling their critics with the likes of this one, call 1-800-CRY-HARD. And this sort of thing. But the guts of it is that this trickle-down economics, this expectation that if you spray around the tax cuts at the big end, if you hand it to Wall Street, if you hand it to the multinational corporations based in America, that they will create economic growth. What really happens is it just trickles to the top. You know, this has been happening in America for decades, the rise of inequality since Ronald Reagan and his trickle-down economics. Meanwhile, they are pointing the bone in distraction at the immigrants. Trump calls them collectively bad people almost every day. This one, to quote him, menacing immigrants, some of the most vicious people on the planet. Sorry, we can't do a Donald Trump accent. To rile up the bigots, to rile up the rednecks, he's literally revoked the temporary legal status of more than 1 million people. And even today, talking Friday, he said that he'd be going after his own citizens born in America over anti-Semitism, anti-Israel remarks. So as with the insidious effect of IPAC, the Israel lobby on America's ship of state, the Israel lobby which recycles the billions in US aid, so American taxpayers, they pay their tax, the public money then gets sent to Israel, billions to prosecute their Holocaust in Gaza, and they recycle it back to the pro-genocide US lobby groups such as IPAC, which in turn literally pay off the politicians. Donald's up to about $250 million himself. Almost every politician on Capitol Hill bought off by this pro-genocide US lobby group. Just bribes, nothing more. Legalised corruption. As with IPAC, the one big nasty bill recycles political donations of corporations back to the corporations by way of tax cuts. They give a little bit to the politicians and they get back a lot in tax savings, as if they need them. Have a look at their balance sheets. Have a look at their P&Ls. They don't need tax cuts. The profit margins are enormous. And we could blame the corporations, but they're just doing their job. They're just acting in the interests of their shareholders, as it is beholden upon directors of companies to do to get their tax bill down. That is rational. So who do we blame? Well, we definitely blame the populist demagoguery of Donald Trump, the way he's pulled the wool over the eyes of so many Americans and his cronies. But the collapse of the media, in large part, is to blame also. You know, the rise of right-wing nutjob media, the suppression of evidence-based media. That's in a large way to blame, because most of these companies, these media companies, are corporations, large corporations, which benefit financially from the one big beautiful bill. And due to their own financial woes, being attacked by the internet, they are even more craven in their reporting. Even the top titles like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, missing massive stories, skewed in their reporting every day, failing miserably to report straight in a non-racist way along with the evidence. It's mind-boggling to witness the power of propaganda in the US. We get it here too. It's massive in Australia. But in America, it just is so potent. And the gullibility of the American voters, of the MAGA crowd, and the doublespeak of Donald Trump and company as he runs roughshod over the courts and separation of powers, paving the way for authoritarian democracy. Authoritarian democracy is here. Dictatorial democracy. That's what happens when you crush the courts. But the mass delusion caused by propaganda and misreporting is just mind-boggling. While he's telling them all they'll be better off turfing these vicious immigrants out of the country, even though they've committed no crime, even though they are key to the labour market, to farm labour, to factory labour, low-cost labour. I mean, who's going to do it? The college kids going to do these jobs? Is bizarre. And while his military-industrial lobby is aiming squarely at China, get this, and of course Richard Marles, Penny Wong and Albert, they're all on board with this anti-China stuff, although much better than the last mob, the Libs, the coalition. But get this, in 2023, the bottom 50% of Chinese citizens held twice the net wealth of the bottom 50% of American citizens. Just let that one sink in. As the financier Colin Fabig put it, yes, twice the net wealth in a far poorer country. Despite all the GDP flexing, says Colin, Silicon Valley hype and Wall Street bravado, the average person in China now holds more personal wealth than their American counterparts. And this is despite lower average GDP in China. Why? Well, in America we've got a generation burdened by student loans, soaring rents, medical bills. A bit like here in Australia. It's funny, we're mimicking them. And a population in China with high home ownership, lower debt and rapid savings-driven growth. myth, just a management proposition. America is just blowing itself up. And so it is. The Trump administration is on a jihad to blame immigrants for all their woes as they strip Medicaid and food aid and their forests too. Debt slaves preyed on by the corporatocracy. Now in Australia the lessons are clear. We do lag a few years behind the US, and surely we're not going to go directly down their path, but it is headed in that direction because of money in politics. We don't have the same extreme level of gun deaths or people living in tent cities as they do in America, but if you follow the money, that is getting worse in Australia, as we all know, homelessness. But if you follow the money, the policy stasis in this country, the failure to enact significant reforms comes down to political donations and lobbying, what they call campaign finance in the US. And the most recent donations reforms in Australia actually lifted the ceiling for the duopoly, for the Coalition and the Labor parties, at how much money they could raise in donations, while putting the squeeze on independent candidates to preserve this duopoly. It's now a third, major parties and independents in terms of voting, but in terms of power, due to the electoral laws, duopoly prevails. It's the same deal in America with the Republicans and Democrats, of course. It's just a money game there. How does an independent finance a tilt at the presidency? Meanwhile, the thriving weapons lobby profiting from genocide. We just published the story on Francesca Albanese's report, the UN's report into the large multinational companies profiting from the Holocaust in Gaza. A lot of the big names. Australia's involved at the edges, of course, as well, washing money through to Israel. So as Trump pressured the UN this week to dump Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights, for her support of human rights, the UN issued a report, The Economy of Genocide. A weapons lobby stacked with profiteering ex-military and former political types in the US and in Australia is out of control. It's out of control. Check the names. BDS them. And as in America, you won't see the students protesting now much because, mimicking the US, our unis have shut down peaceful student protests because of the Zionist lobby and the craven cowardice of our politicians and university chiefs to stand up for free speech. And just you wait now. Just you wait for facial recognition technology to fill in and the social credit scores for everybody. Over in America, ICE is using a new app that can allegedly identify somebody based on their fingerprints or face simply by pointing a smartphone at them. Now you marry that with the latest moves to vet people's social media, get them to take off their privacy settings so you can see whether they've said anything nasty about Benjamin Netanyahu or Donald Trump. Their private data open to the government. The show will be all over unless this slide is arrested. I'll just keep on going. In the name of liberty and freedom, of course. Please like, share and comment in the section below and throw us a few bucks on Patreon if you can afford it. We're going to stay on this. Obviously, Australia, as with America, is becoming more authoritarian. The under-16 media ban, the failure of politicians to be accountable. So we need to keep on this because the mainstream media will not do it for you. So thank you for your support.